Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, but something feels strange. No phone beside your bed, no Wi-Fi, no notification, no Instagram, no TikTok, no GPS telling you where to go, no Spotify, no Google. You walk outside and people are using paper maps. Kids are actually playing outside. People are talking face to face instead of staring at screens. And suddenly you realize you're in 1990. Now let me ask you something. What would be the first thing you do? Would you panic? Would you feel free? Would you feel lost? Because if we're honest, many of us don't just use technology anymore. We depend on it emotionally. Our phones became clocks, calendars, entertainment, comfort, identity, distraction, and even escape. And here's the scary question. If everything digital disappeared, would you still know who you are? That question is deeper than technology. It's spiritual. Because this generation has more connection than ever. Yet many people feel more empty than ever. We scroll endlessly but still feel lonely. We consume content all day but still feel spiritually hungry. And the Bible warned us about this long ago. In the book of Ecclesiastes, King Solomon had everything people dream of: wisdom, money, pleasure, success, entertainment. Yet he said, "Everything is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." Think about that. A man who had everything still felt empty. Why? Because humans were never designed to be fulfilled by constant consumption. We were designed for God. Now imagine being in 1990. No algorithm controlling your attention. No dopamine hits every 10 seconds. No endless scrolling at 2 in the morning. For the first time in years, you might actually hear your own thoughts. And maybe that's what scares people the most. Silence. Because silence exposes what distractions hide. Some people are terrified of being alone because when the noise disappears, they finally notice the pain inside them. But here's the beautiful part. Sometimes God allows silence so we can finally hear him. The Bible says in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." Not scroll more, not consume more, not distract yourself more. Be still. What if waking up in 1990 would actually reveal how spiritually dependent we became on noise? What if losing technology would expose how disconnected we are from God? And maybe, just maybe, that would be the beginning of healing. Because before God uses people publicly, he often isolates them privately. Moses spent years in the desert. David learned in the wilderness. Even Jesus Christ spent 40 days alone before beginning his ministry. Because isolation can either destroy you or transform you. And maybe if you woke up in 1990 without all the noise, you'd finally rediscover things modern life stole from you. Real conversations, patience, attention, presence, and most importantly, dependence on God instead of dependence on distractions. But here's the real question. Would you survive spiritually if everything modern disappeared tomorrow? Because faith that only survives with comfort is weak faith. And that leads us to the deeper lesson. What happens when God removes the things we rely on the most? So what happens when God removes the things we depend on? Sometimes we think losing comfort means God abandoned us. But in the Bible, God often removed distractions to reveal truth. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. When they left Egypt, they lost familiarity, comfort, and security. Suddenly there was no stable future, no predictable system, no luxury. And what happened? Their hearts were exposed. Some complained, some panicked. Some wanted to go back to slavery because at least slavery felt familiar. And honestly, many people today are spiritually the same. We say we trust God until comfort disappears, until the Wi-Fi stops working, until money gets tight, until loneliness hits, until life becomes quiet. Then suddenly we realize how many things were replacing God in our hearts. Sometimes distractions become modern idols. Not because phones are evil, but because anything that controls your heart more than God becomes dangerous. The Bible says in Exodus that while Moses was on the mountain with God, the people became impatient and created a golden calf. Think about that. The moment they felt disconnected, they created something else to worship. And humanity still does that today. Some worship popularity. Some worship entertainment. Some worship relationships, some worship social media validation. But none of those things can save the soul. Only God can fill what eternity created inside you. That's why many people have full schedules but empty hearts. Now imagine again waking up in 1990. No instant entertainment, no endless distractions. At first it might feel uncomfortable, but eventually you may begin noticing things again. The beauty of creation, the sound of your own prayers, the importance of family, the value of real friendships. You may even realize how much time modern life steals from your relationship with God. And here's something powerful. The enemy doesn't always destroy people with evil. Sometimes he simply keeps them distracted. Distracted people rarely pray deeply. Distracted people rarely think deeply. Distracted people rarely hear God clearly. That's why this message matters, because God is calling this generation not just to disconnect from technology sometimes, but reconnect spiritually. Maybe you don't need more scrolling. Maybe you need more prayer. Maybe you don't need another distraction. Maybe you need healing. Maybe the reason you feel empty isn't because life lacks entertainment, but because your soul lacks God. So if you woke up in 1990 tomorrow, what would happen? Would you collapse without distractions? Or would you finally discover peace? Because true peace does not come from having constant connection to the internet. True peace comes from connection with God. And maybe that's the lesson. The world became louder, but God still speaks in stillness. So tonight, put the phone down for a moment. Pray. Think. Listen. Because the greatest connection you can ever have is not Wi-Fi. It's a relationship with God. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe Sight Kids and Niños con Vision.